Hey, Am. Good morning, girl. Today is the 20th of May, 2019. I just want to say welcome. Thank you for being here. And you know what? I think it's so great that we're both alive right now. I mean, what an amazing time to be alive. Just loving all this change happening in terms of technology and communication and a lot of cultural shifts that are going on as it relates to issues like, political issues, social issues. It's really an exciting time to be alive. And, there's so many shifts that are going on. And anyway, I just wanted to say it's pretty amazing that we're sort of all living together in the world right now on this planet that's orbiting the sun. Anyway, so the title of this video is How Many Foreign Countries Have I Been to? And let me think. I've been to 3. That's right. And I was thinking, I'll tell you what they are. The 3 foreign countries that I've been to are Mexico, Canada, and Brazil. Have I been to any more foreign countries than that? Nope. That's all. Just those 3. Now, even subtle differences? No. Those are the 3 that I've been to. So how many countries are there in the world? I'm thinking that there are about 150 countries in the world. And I've been to 3 of them. Well, actually, that's 3 foreign countries. I've been to 4 if you count the United States. So boom. I got the 4th one for free, right? So, Emily, I have a sense that you've been to a lot more than I have already, and you're only like 14 years old. I think you've been to, am I right to think that you've been to Turkey and Italy and Ireland and probably England? Right there, off the top of my head, that's like 5 different countries that you've been to. So that's pretty good. I have a feeling that people are going to be doing more international travel in the future just because it'll be easier, with airlines and planes becoming more readily available. When I was a kid, here's the thing. My family was pretty big. It was made up of 6 kids. That's a total of 8 people. And, getting that many people onto an airplane, that's an expensive proposition. But my dad was able to do it. I remember being on an airplane when I was like 13, 14 years old. And we were flying to Hawaii. I don't know how my dad financially did it. He's a financial genius. Definitely. But somehow he got the entire family on a plane to Hawaii, and we went to Hawaii. And by the way, I really enjoyed that trip. I had a really good time. And thankfully I've been to Hawaii on a few more times subsequently. I went to Hawaii with you and your mom. I went to Hawaii, I think, another time, which I think probably with my family. So I think I've been to Hawaii at least 3 times now. And each time has been really enjoyable and eye-opening. In fact, I wonder, Emily, if you recall going to Hawaii, you were actually pretty young. You were easily 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old when we were going to Hawaii. And I seem to remember that you weren't necessarily keen all the time to play in the ocean water on the beach. I think you liked playing on the sand a little bit more than playing in the water. But we got you into the water. Of course we did. And you began to enjoy it. Here's the thing. You were you were small. You were only like 3 years old. And so, hey, I could imagine the thing about water in the ocean is that it's kind of cold, especially for a 3-year-old. I get it. And so it wasn't your favorite thing to be out in the water. Now, mind you, the water in Hawaii is a lot warmer than the water in California, at least in my view. And so, I can only imagine that. Of course, you're older now, so you might be more amenable to going into the ocean water and the waters surrounding California. But I remember you being a little uncertain about the water. But we did a lot of amazing water things. For example, we went under the water in a submarine. We had a submarine adventure in Hawaii. I wonder if you remember that. And we also there was a hotel that was doing a release of turtles, a turtle release, and we saw that. And we also went to a number of Hawaiian luau's where we were eating food buffet. We had poi and traditional Hawaiian foods along with some pork that was made in a special way where they bury the pig underground, and that traditional way that they make the pork back in Hawaii. And we spent a lot of time just sort of playing around, going to restaurants, eating out. I thought it was a good time. One thing that in particular that we did is we had Hawaiian shaved ice. I definitely remember that. And in fact, I had Hawaiian shaved ice recently at the local Spring Fest here in Lompoc. And man, was it good. I could definitely eat Hawaiian shaved ice every day. Absolutely. In fact, I could eat Hawaiian shaved ice right now. Absolutely, could definitely do that. Now, I also remember going on a number of hikes in Hawaii. There was one time we went to Volcano National Park in Hawaii. And of course, we went to the Big Island, and that's where Volcano National Park is. And we did a lot of hiking. We hiked inside these lava tunnels that were underground. And in fact, I kind of remember you being a little upset during that hike in the lava tunnel. I think you were just uncomfortable. It was honestly quite hot there and humid, and with all the activity and travel, I can imagine it was a real challenge for you. But I do remember, at least for a moment there, you enjoying hiking at Volcano National Monument. I'm sure we've got a ton of pictures that sort of show us at the monument. And let's see what else. Oh, we also did a lot of hiking around special areas, very picturesque vistas as we drove around the mountain. I think we literally drove around the entire island. We did a lot of driving around the island, and we visited a lot of the various beaches. It was fun. I tell you, I really had a good time. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And then I remember we had a really nice condo. It was just beautiful. It was a tile floor, and the air conditioning was on all the time, and we had a really nice view. And I especially remember just how humid it was. So green and humid and rainy. Wow. It was very tropical. And anyway, as I'm going through these memories, I really am sort of enjoying again that wonderful trip that we took. And I'm glad that you were a part of it, Emily. We had a good time. So I was thinking there was some aspect of travel that I wanted to describe. It's not coming to mind. Anyway, we've been traveling before in various places. I mean, yeah. I particularly remember our travels to Carlsbad Caverns in southern New Mexico. Now, that was an experience. I think you were about 5 years old when we did that trip. So you were a lot older than Hawaii. And boy, I tell you, that was fun. I actually really liked that trip to southern New Mexico. I particularly remember, say, hikes in the Guadalupe National Forest. That was amazing. Oh, I remember it was so hot. Let me tell you, southern New Mexico is really hot. And I can also remember just really enjoying Carlsbad Caverns with the bats. I don't know if you remember this. There was just this huge tornado of bats in the evening at twilight as the bats were exiting the Carlsbad Caverns cave and going out to hunt for insects in the surrounding area. And it was just this whirlwind of bats that were exiting the cave. It was just amazing. I came back with a lot of sort of learning and understanding about how to notice bats and what they look like. It's been really useful. That was a very useful trip. Every once in a while, I do see a bat at twilight. And I credit that trip to Carlsbad Caverns giving me the information that I need in order to sort of observe what a bat looks like in flight. Because, well, here's the thing. I really don't see bats very often in my area here in California. So when I'm traveling, like to places like Arizona, I seem to see more bats. Anyway, so what's going on with me? This next couple of days is going to be pretty darn amazing. Number one is I think I'm going to go to a sushi restaurant with my friends tomorrow evening. It's kind of funny. I've got friends that are gathering for in Santa Barbara tomorrow evening, and I've got friends that are gathering in San Luis Obispo. And each of those places is an hour away from Lompoc, either Santa Barbara or San Luis Obispo. So I'm kind of having to decide what group of friends to go visit tomorrow. I'm kind of torn. Maybe I'm not so torn. I'm going to go get sushi. I'm going to go get sushi. That's what I'm going to do. Who am I fooling? I'm going to go get some sushi and go visit with my friends in San Luis Obispo. So, and then after Tuesday night, Wednesday is a big day for me. I'm traveling to Albuquerque, New Mexico. That's right. I'm going to go visit my family and friends in New Mexico later this week. And I'm pretty excited about it. Yes, just yesterday, I rented a rental car through the Budget Rent-A-Car website. And so I'll have a car when I get there. And I'm excited. How can you not be excited about visiting family and friends? I'll be spending the night with doing some couch surfing with my friend Miles out in Los Alamos and hanging out with my buddy, with another buddy of mine from college. And then I'm also going to be visiting hopefully 2 relatives. We'll see how that goes. I've got Lydia Trujillo, who's my cousin, who I'm going to visit. And I'm also going to try to contact Leon Trujillo. Leon and Ruben Trujillo, brothers, also more cousins of mine. Funny thing, I was making plans with, I guess, Leon or Ruben. I can't remember which one. I get those 2 brothers mixed up sometimes. I think it was Ruben. And he deactivated his Facebook account before I could get his phone number. What? Here's the thing about social media. I know there are a lot of people who are trying to cut down, which is important. I think it's a really wise move sometimes. But we were sort of in the midst of making plans to visit one another, and we literally haven't seen each other for like 10 years. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to have to call some of my other cousins, see if I can get Ruben's telephone number so we can do something next week. Yeah. So, maybe I will contact Lydia and ask her if she happens to know Ruben and Leon's telephone number or contact information, since they both live in the same city, right? Anyway, I know, Emily, you're not very familiar with your cousins. Why? Because you've never seen them. That's one of the problems when it comes to separation from family. It's just part of the world today that everyone's traveling so much. I know I've traveled a lot. I'm 2 states away from where I grew up, and so I know, Emily, it's a real struggle for you in particular to see your relatives. And I wish I actually go to New Mexico every year, and I'd really be grateful if you would come along. That would be amazing. And then we could go visit your relatives. But I guess we'll just have to be content with taking videos of them and showing you videos of my experience as I visit with them myself. So, that's all we can do, man. At least for now. Maybe when you turn 18, then we can go take a vacation in New Mexico and visit your relatives. Here's the thing that, one thing that I'm finding is really important to me, and I hope to some extent I've conveyed some of that importance to you, and that is a love of family. A love of family is really, it turns out to be a pretty important value to me. And I don't think I've really ever sort of isolated that idea in such an explicit form before. I do love my family and I love my friends and coworkers, but I don't think that I've sort of isolated this idea of the love of family as a value. And believe it or not, it's a really important value to me. I'm kind of surprised about it. I think I might have talked to you about it before. And it's interesting how in my life there's this really vast contradiction between the fact that I live so far away from my family and the fact that I have a really strong value of love of family. So those are two contradicting notions. And it's, I guess I talked about it a little bit yesterday. And the fact is, I am close to my family. I'm close to you, which, is a relationship that I want to nurture and develop and try to make the most of. So maybe I am being consistent with my values. Yeah. But here's the thing too. In the same vein, while I do have a love of family, I also have a love of friends, a love of acquaintances. I've got a love of people. I can be an extrovert if I want to, and I do happen to love groups of people, congregating people who are getting together. For example, tomorrow, a big struggle of mine is deciding what group of people to go visit. This is actually a pretty normal thing where I'm asking myself, well, I can't split myself into two. I have to make a decision to go either to one place or another. I want to go to both. I wish I could go to both, but logistically, it's just not making sense right now. So, for me, this is just a normal struggle. It's the struggle to meet my needs to gather together with people in my group, people in my tribe. It's just what I'm all about, man. It comes natural to me. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily easy all the time because human relationships seldom are like completely easy, but um, somehow I manage pretty well. I manage okay. So, one thing that has been on my mind lately is apples and carrots. Let me tell you, apples and carrots bring me pleasure. What can I say? They bring me meaning. To me, eating apples and carrots means taking care of my health and eating a high nutrient diet. And, to me, that's really important. It sustains me. So this morning for breakfast, I had an opal apple. That's right. I've never eaten an opal apple before. Opal apples are the color yellow. They are a cultivar of apples that is rather new. I think they originated in a cross between a golden delicious apples and some other kind of apple in a university in Prague. And one of the key characteristics of the opal apple is that it is less prone to turning brown. Apparently, it is a variety of apple that there's a chemical called, I guess, oxidase, and I'm not really sure what the full name of that chemical is, but it's some oxidase chemical. This particular type of apple genetically doesn't have the ability, it doesn't necessarily have the ability to produce that molecule, the oxidase molecule. And for that reason, it doesn't turn brown. It doesn't brown. And so that makes the opal apple an apple that's a beautiful apple for a long time, especially after it's been sliced and is kept out in the air. I actually really enjoy the apple. I must admit, I have really strong memories about not liking Golden Delicious apples. Mainly because I think when I was a kid, I kind of remember them being somewhat mealy. Mealy means that their texture is soft. So, in fact, both Golden Delicious and Red Delicious apples, I am not necessarily a fan of because of their mealiness. At least these are biases that I developed when I was a kid. And believe it or not, they're actually pretty strong in me today. And so I remember when I went to eat the opal apple, really having to do some emotional work to get myself to eat the opal apple. It turns out that I have an aversion to Golden Delicious apples that I really wasn't cognizant of. Anyway, the work paid off, thankfully, and I had a really wonderful apple eating experience eating the opal apple. I felt that it was sufficiently crunchy and it was certainly flavorful. It had a really pleasant, sweet taste, an apple, sweet apple taste. I really enjoyed it. And I'm not sugarcoating the experience. It was a really good experience. And so I'm actually now kind of a fan of the opal apple. And it's not something that I would have expected because I kind of thought that it was probably a cross with a Golden Delicious apple, which it was. But I thought that it would be more Golden Delicious-y, and it wasn't. It was less Golden Delicious-y. And an interesting thing about the opal apple was how large it was. I mean, this was a honking big apple. It was easily a medium-sized to medium-large size apple. And it was really good. The whole eating experience was very enjoyable from beginning to end. So I've got no regrets. And I'm really thankful for the scientists who crossed Golden Delicious with some other kind of apple to produce an it was a really good eating apple. Yeah. And I'm also quite grateful to have a refrigerator, because for me, eating a cold apple is amazing. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love refrigerated apples. Give me a refrigerated apple anytime over a room temperature apple. Now, that's not to say that room temperature apples are not any good. It's sort of like a difference between, say, ice cold water and tap water that is at ambient temperature. I think I might choose ice cold water every time. Why? I don't know why. Why do people like to drink refrigerated water? I don't know. But if I had a choice between just tap water at ambient pressure, ambient temperature, and cold tap water with ice, I would definitely take ice pretty much most of the time. Now, that's not to say that I wouldn't ever have room temperature water, because I drink room temperature water all the time. In fact, I drank it yesterday. I went to the gym yesterday late at night. Well, it was about 8 o'clock, 7 or 8 o'clock p.m. And I had water to drink after my workout. I did some bicycle training, and the water was not refrigerated. It was perfectly okay. Sometimes human bodies just need water to rehydrate. Yep, I'm there. Sometimes you just need water, and it doesn't matter whether it's cold or hot or medium. Speaking of hot water, I have had a really strong interest in teas lately, not just herbal teas, but black teas. And I have a real interest in drinking some oolong tea. I'm really loving this idea of black tea as a way to get, what do they call it? Polyphenols? Yeah. There's something about the black tea which is really good at, say, lowering blood glucose and things like that. And I'm always keen to try something new like that. One thing I like about herbal tea or even black tea is that it has no calories. And that's great, because I can drink as much as I want. It's also quite hydrating, and I know how important it is to get sufficient liquids in my body. And the fact is, sometimes I forget to drink water. I just forget. I lose a sense of time, and I just get so wrapped up or involved in whatever I'm doing in the moment, and water just doesn't come to mind. And so, every once in a while, I've got to put some effort into drinking some water. Now, I think I've been told that older people, when people get really old, they become even less sensitive to whether they are thirsty or not. And I think dehydration happens a lot in older people, particularly people with dementia and Alzheimer's and other problems of cognitive decline or related to cognitive decline. So that's actually a pretty concerning fact. I've actually also seen older people who it's clear are not getting enough calories. Got to get those calories, man. And it's interesting to me that a lot of that, the explanation for that just might be the aging body, how it's just not necessarily signaling that the body needs food and water. So, in a way, there are a lot of people who I would call intuitive eaters out there who really are trying to pay attention to the signals that their body is giving them about whether they drink water or eat food. And, there's a lot of benefits to being a successful intuitive eater. But those benefits truly break down when you get older and your body doesn't signal hunger or thirst very well. Yeah. Yeah. I've always kind of been the person who I try to look for objective measures about the reality that I'm experiencing. Um, for example, one objective measure for the reality I'm experiencing would be temperature. I'm always looking for the temperature. What's the temperature inside? What's the temperature outdoors? Because that number is valuable to me. I remember Sheila making fun of me. That is your mom, making fun of me that I'm not paying attention to my own feelings about whether it's hot or cold in the room. But I pay a lot of attention to the numbers on the thermometer. It's just the way I've pretty much always been. I'm always looking for, I'm always doing fact checking related to, try to some observable objective fact, relating to things like, am I feeling really hot? I don't know. Let's put a thermometer in my mouth. Let's look at the weather and see what the temperature is outside. And I tend to rely on those facts more than just my felt experience of, say, temperature indoors or outdoors. And I don't know what that necessarily is an indicator of. It may not indicate anything about my personality or the way I go about my life, but I don't know. It's just interesting. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to going to eat sushi tomorrow. And I wonder if we're going to do karaoke too. I don't know. I might be able to do a karaoke song or two. That sounds like fun. I think, speaking of celebrations, speaking of karaoke and getting together, gathering with friends, you ought to know that my birthday is coming up. May 27th is my birthday. In fact, I think maybe tonight I'll write a letter. Hey Google, add an appointment.
What's the title of the event?
Write letter to Emily.
Sure. When is the event?
Today.
At what time?
5:00 p.m.
All right. Write letter to Emily today at 5 p.m. Do you want to save that?
Yes, please.
Sure. It's on your calendar.
Okay. So the reason I'm reminding myself to write a letter to you is because I want to remind you that my birthday is coming up, the 27th of May. I'll be 48 years old, 48 years young. I'm thankful that I still have 2 years before I'm 50. It's kind of interesting. On the one hand, I'm sort of not so happy about being near the 50-year mark. But on the other hand, what that means is huge amounts of experience with life, and of course, I want to keep on living. So those numbers inevitably have to start increasing. I think I've done a really good job, over the last 50 years of my life. But now, that's not to say that I don't have any regrets, because, today I recognize so many things about sort of mistaken behavior in my past. And thankfully, I never really sort of engaged in any behavior that was at least terribly destructive. That is self-destructive. Thankfully, I was able to sort of maneuver my life in ways that, maybe we're not ideal, maybe we're not optimal, but somehow, I've done okay. I could be, I'm not in jail. I'm not, homeless. I'm not super duper sick. somehow I've managed to keep it together all these years. And you know what's kind of funny is I think I've really only started excelling in life just say within the last 4 or 5 years, maybe just 4 years. Serious. And I really did struggle. Let me tell you, during my late 20s and basically all my 30s. And I really didn't stop struggling till at least my mid 30s. Heck, no way. I tell you, I struggled in my late 20s and in my 30s and in my early 40s. I had at least a good 10, 15 years of struggle. Oh, yeah. Maybe even at least 17 years of struggle. Now that I'm thinking about it, okay, it's more along the lines of maybe 20 years of struggle. It's kind of funny. I do really well at life, right? I do pretty darn well. For example, I take night classes and I typically get A's in all my classes. I do fine at work. I excel at work. And personally, I excel too. But I also have really high standards for my behavior. And for me, and I also tend to be somewhat outcome focused, which I know is probably not the most healthy. I tend to be somewhat goal oriented, which I kind of recognize that as being a fairly masculine trait. And instead of sort of being in the moment, sort of what I'd call a more feminine trait, which is sort of enjoying whatever's going on. I tend to be a little bit more goal oriented and a little more future oriented. And I can see that that's probably been not the most ideal, although it hasn't been bad. One personality trait that I have that's also quite powerful is I happen to believe I have a pretty strong work ethic. And for me, there is virtue in work. And I mean, that's why for me, it's like unfathomable that I might ever retire. To me, it's just runs counter to so many of my values that I can't see myself ever not working. At least part-time, that's for sure. Doing some kind of work or study or education or something like that. I mean, I can't really, for me, sort of the Protestant work ethic is an important value. It is a big part of my life. It is a big part of how I arrange my life and where I get a sense of mastery and a sense of efficacy and a sense of being able to be effective in the world. Without that Protestant work ethic that is basically a rule of thumb about how to best survive and get along in the world. I don't know how people do it, honestly. And you know what? It doesn't take long for a person's sort of confidence in their work life or in their personal life when they separate themselves to lose confidence. Like I can imagine people who retire, let's say that a person retires, maybe they're 55 years old. And maybe they're retired for just 3 years. I can imagine that even after just 3 years of retirement, that one might feel might be impossible to go back into the workforce. Which to me feels like such a tragedy. I could definitely see a person thinking that they will basically lose touch with their work, with the workaday world, just even after 3 years of retirement. And maybe just after 2. Maybe not just after 1, but certainly after 2 years. I could imagine people feeling pretty inhibited about returning to work, losing confidence. It really doesn't take very long. I have a sense that it's concerning to me, this whole idea of, I guess what I do, for me, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, if somehow I did decide to retire when I was 55 and then wanted to come back to the workaday world, I mean, it might be that I wouldn't come back to work as, say, a professional, that I would come back to work as, I could work as maybe a volunteer for a little while, or even work at like a gas station or a fast food restaurant or something like that. Who knows? I have a feeling that I would probably get back to work somehow, even if I felt intimidated about going back into sort of like professional work at a very high level. And it's kind of funny. Even though I'm sort of at what I'd call sort of the peak of my earning power in my career right now, or I'll at least be at the peak of my earning power, say between the next 5 and 10 years, that even I, when it comes to, say, changing jobs, like to a different field, I do feel a little concern in my belly when I consider moving into any kind of job, because I don't know, I'm a person who gets comfortable. I get comfortable at work in a certain position, doing a certain thing every day. And it's just, I enjoy it. I remember the days of learning how to do a job for the first time. And let me tell you, it's a struggle sometimes because of the uncertainty, not necessarily knowing what to do next, or, eventually with feedback, you get to learn whatever job it is you've decided to do. And so I'm thankful for that. The brain is really excellent at adaptation. And for me, I guess sometimes I lose confidence in my ability to adapt. And I think that's what it might be for retirees too. For retirees, they may think that, I'm retired now and I haven't had a job in 5 years. Maybe it's beyond me to get employed again. I can feel, I really do have a sense of that helplessness and hopelessness that older people might feel about getting back into the workforce again. And, I hope that that's never the case for me. I hope to always, for me, being gainfully employed is about it. There's powerful meaning behind it. And, here's the thing. I could definitely find ways to relax and unwind and go on vacation, within the allotted vacation time period, 2-4 weeks, 6 weeks a year. That is plenty, especially with weekends. Here's the thing. The real bottom line is the fact that work today is a lot different than work was 50 years ago. And work today in the present moment is a lot different than it was 100 years ago. 100 years ago, we had the budding industrial revolution where there was loud noises in the workplace, and we had boilers that were exploding all the time, steam boilers that were exploding. We had, OSHA didn't exist back then. It was only an organization created back in 1970. So 100 years from now, OSHA didn't exist. Life was hard. The Industrial Revolution was a real struggle for a lot of people, and it was physically challenging to live and work among machines and be productive with the tools that they had available. And work was hard, right? It was physical labor quite often, and you basically had to be young to perform it, right? Or at least you had to be strong to perform it, and you had to sort of endure discomforts related to risk to your body and to your senses, to your safety. I get it. And yeah, if you're like 60, 70 years old, you don't want to do that anymore because, you know, it's work. It's hard work. Now, today's work is really different. For a lot of people, it's about information management. Information management is about communication, electronic communication through emails, organization of knowledge through databases. It's about learning new things, integrating lots of information, integrating schedules with budget, right? It's about logistics, getting things from point A to point B, using machines and tools and business processes. So all that I'm describing right now is a kind of work that is more abstract. It's significantly more abstract than it was 100 years ago. 100 years ago, this bale of hay needed to be moved from point A to point B. And you had these tools to do it with, and these vehicles to do it with, and these people to do it with, and that was it. And that was it. Today, bales of hay are moved around by machines. They're moved around by forklifts, semi-tractor trailers. They're baled with balers, and they're bought and sold in marketplaces. And the marketplaces may not even be brick and mortar marketplaces. They may be virtual marketplaces that are, largely in the cloud, right? So, and there are machines that manage it. So there are machines and business processes that manage the work, so to speak. And that trend is going to become ever more present. I mean, so I guess my point is that work has really changed. In fact, there's really no need. I mean, I could continue to work until the day I died, pretty much. Absolutely. Or at least maybe within a month of my dying, I could continue to work. Because, all work really requires today is a functioning mind and perhaps hands that can type an email. And probably eyes that can read. I mean, if you got those things, if you've got hands and eyes and a mind, you can pretty much work however you want to and make whatever, basically in any field that you like, whether it's accounting or program management or project engineering or marketing, computer technology, communications, for the most part, you could work in any economic sector of the world. And I'm so grateful to be living at a time when I could say that that's possible. So really, retirement is just not necessary anymore. And I think that, even because of culture and the breakup and the separation of relationships right now, there's a big separation of relationships. What's great is that work is binding. It binds people together. In order to perform business processes and to make them work, you sort of have to interact with other people. And so, just as there's like families which are bound together by necessity to sustain each other's health, work is the same way. People are, corporations are interested in making profits, and that requires people and intelligence, some kind of intelligence, some kind of integrating personalities that help those business processes come together. And, communication is necessary in both those endeavors. So in a way, there's like a work family, and then there's a family. This is all about social cohesion. It's about human beings working together. And so I guess my point is that there are a lot of forces bringing people apart right now, but forces of work and family are bringing people together. And yeah. And I think the forces that are pulling people apart right now are going to get even more and more strong. The forces that are pulling people apart relate to things like smartphone use, people watching TV, cable television, movies. There's a lot of entertainment and media out there, and I believe that that media will become even more compelling in the future through virtual reality and you know, artificial intelligence. We're going to be interacting more and more with AI voice assistants and less with other human beings. And that's really going to, the social cohesion that human beings are so fond of is really going to begin to fray. And, so I'm seeking out as many avenues of a sort of binding together with other people as much as I can through my friends and through my family and through my coworkers. Here's the facts. I'm kind of old fashioned when it comes to social, social mores, social norms, you know, that's all changing. The current society is really, I mean, even people like millennials, for example, and Generation Z, the emphasis on being with other people is just not as strong in these groups. And it's kind of funny. Our brains, I believe that our brains are as large as they are because they sort of have to deal with, the planning and the strategy and the tactics of human communication and interaction, right? It's about being engaged. Our brains are as large as they are because they need to solve problems related to social engagement. That's why our brains are big, right? And that's also why we're so willing to look at life from different perspectives. It's this huge brain that we have, this big melon on our shoulders, within our skulls. It's so big because what keeps us alive as a species is how we integrate with other people, how we communicate. It's the social cohesion. This is our survival strategy. This is how we are fit in terms of environmental fitness. From an evolutionary standpoint, our big brains are essentially the reason why we're the dominant species on the planet. Things are changing. It's kind of interesting. The face-to-face interactions are going lower, but I think the social media interactions are going higher. And so, there's an exchange. Maybe in the past, people would sort of have face-to-face interactions with 4, 5, 6, 7 people, maybe even as high as maybe 20. But today, because of modern media, I might be able to reach out to thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, even millions of people through social media, which is wonderful. But we also kind of lose this skill with interacting with other people. And I'm not necessarily sure. Maybe it's the same kind of interaction. Instead of the face-to-face interaction, we're having social media interactions. And here's the thing about social media interactions. I think they might require a big brain too, but they may not require as big as face-to-face interactions. I don't know. Our brain, I guess, no matter what, will probably be used no matter what. I mean, we've got the brain. I don't know if our brains will start getting smaller in the world of. The fact is, I guess our brains aren't as big as they are just for social cohesion reasons. It's probably for tool making reasons and just coping with the fast-paced world. And the fact is, the world's getting more and more fast-paced. I mean, there are so many cultural shifts that are going on, just paradigm shifts happening in science and art and entertainment and And even business, lots tumultuous changes in business these days. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see these things happen and see these changes happen. I guess even if we lose a little bit of social cohesion, our brains are still going to have to be fairly large for us to be able to succeed in such a fast-paced, ever-changing world. So, I guess our brains will have plenty to do. And interestingly enough, I think that today, because of technology, human beings are thinking more thoughts. We're more engaged with the world on a moment-to-moment basis. Like we check the weather, for example, the weather reports. Now, maybe 100 years ago, maybe people didn't check the weather reports. Maybe they just stepped outside and they talked about the weather for a little while. I don't know. I have a feeling that our access to information is sort of making our world a higher quality world. I think it's improving our quality of life, access to all this information. I think that human beings are becoming more information processors than ever before. 100 years ago, I can imagine a person just not reading for a month. I can imagine that is the case. But for me to consider a person not reading today for a month is just, I mean, a smartphone is essentially a reading machine. And media like Facebook and Reddit, those are all means of communication that are highly focused on words that people use. So reading is a big part of life today. People do it all the time. We read our text messages, we read our emails. There's a lot of reading going on. I think a lot more reading going on than maybe 100 years ago. And so, in fact, I have a sense every once in a while I get like this jolt about the complexity of the world and the lives that we lead. It's like, I'm sometimes I struggle to catch up. It doesn't happen every day, but sometimes I do struggle to catch up to when I return from work, say after a week being on TDY or something. I'm having to catch up to like 80 emails in my inbox or more, like 100 emails in my inbox. So many things have changed. It's kind of interesting how that is. There's just so much change going on so fast. It's kind of interesting to be a human being these days. Anyway, on that note, I want to wrap up my presentation. Thank you very much for being a part of our discussions today. And I hope you have a fantastic day today. I have a feeling that you are, like I mentioned, in the midst of doing your final exams and finishing up for the year. I wish you good luck on your finals. And I hope you wish me bon voyage on my trip to New Mexico. I'll only be gone for about a week, starting Wednesday night. And I'll be thinking about you. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to be able to produce a video that I regularly produce for you, a weekly video. I'm not sure how that's going to happen. I might just take my iPad to New Mexico and do what I can to throw something together on the fly. Anyway, I hope you are in good health, mental and physical. And I wish you happiness, gratitude, peace, and love. I love you, girl. Bye-bye.